everyone. And I'm so happy to have for our Soul Health Conversations today, Maureen Rulison. And did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You surely did.
Well, everyone, Maureen is an incredible human and she is doing incredible work. But as you guys know, Soul Health Conversations is really about enriching and enriching the lives of others, connecting with others, inspiring others. And for me, I have truly been led, I feel, to engage in some really deeper conversations during these difficult times that we're having, and to bring attention to so many people that have been near and dear to me, and some people that I'm learning for the first time, that are doing incredible things in their communities and with their family members that, may not be known to everyone, but people can relate to because they themselves are living a rich life behind the scenes. And I think that we can have a more abundant life when we're connected to people and see what other people are doing that inspires and encourages us to live a deep and enriching life too. And so Maureen is definitely one of those people, and I cannot wait for you to hear from her. And I can't wait to learn more about her, even though I love her already. But I want to just share a little bit about Maureen and what she's doing, and we will jump right in and get started. And I'm more than sure, like all the other conversations, this will lead to a need for another conversation or to continue this conversation. So Maureen is the president and caregiver. She is the president of Caregiver Support and Resources, LLC. It was originally founded as a Medicaid planning company in 2004 and co-founder of We Are Dementia Strong, which I love. I've had a chance, by the way, Maureen, to listen to you and Brian. Love it. Board certified patient advocate, CMP certified Medicaid planner, and CMDCP certified Montessori dementia care professional. Maureen is a certified Eden Alternative Associate, educator, and mentor, and a part of the Florida Pioneer Network. Look how rich her life is right now in giving. She is a trainer by the Alzheimer's Association to facilitate support groups. She began her journey in her 20s, working for the state of Florida Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services, determining eligibility for Medicaid for aged and disabled individuals. In 1999, Maureen left state employment and became an independent contractor specializing in working with individuals to obtain eligibility for Medicaid and VA aid and attendance, as well as protecting their assets before qualifying for these programs. Stemming from this work, her focus and passion for serving individuals living with dementia-related illnesses and person-centered care grew. Last but not least, she is a care partner and Brian LeBlanc, who is living with Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. You can learn more about their journey on their Facebook page, and we will talk all about that. So welcome, Maureen, and everyone welcome Maureen. So Maureen, can you start by telling us, not yet about all your work, but what has led to this passion and this dedication that you have for this work? How did this all start?
I wish I could tell you that I was an intentional person my whole life.
Yeah.
I was a single mom, and I went to work for the state because it was good, stable income. And I let the state of Florida kind of guide me where I was going to make the most money. I'll be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always led by God, and I believe God led me through state employment to work in the division that assists persons who are aged and disabled. And a very brief story, I was the whoop-de-ding-dong supervisor there, and one day I was supervisor on call, and they told me there was a lady out in the lobby that needed to speak with the supervisor. And so I went out and got her, brought her in my office, and I am so ashamed of what I'm about to tell you, but it was the pivotal moment in my life. So, sometimes some of the ugliest, stupidest things that happen can be learning tools for us.
Yeah.
So this poor woman, remember, I was in my 30s, so everybody seemed old at that time.
I know that feeling.
And now the older I get, the older gets.
Yes. Yeah, we keep pushing it back, don't we?
Yes. I'm thinking 130 is right around middle age.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Anyway, this lady, who I believe was more than likely an elder, was in tears. And she said she had just had an interview, and that the person who did the interview had given her this whole list of documents she needed and paperwork and things she had to do. And she just didn't know how to do it. Her husband had taken care of all of their finances, all of their married life, and he's now in a nursing home, and she didn't know how to do it. I responded, and this is the embarrassing part, I responded to her with the company line, so to speak. Ma'am, it's not our job to teach you how to become eligible for this program. It's our job to tell you if you are eligible for this program. And I sent her on her merry way. That night I went home, and after I put the kids to bed, it was just in my brain. It was like a bee buzzing in my ear, what I had done to this woman. So I called in sick the next day to work. I had looked up the lady's telephone number in the system. I called her and told her, I'm going to do something that could get me fired, but I've taken a day off, and I'd like to go to the banks and stuff with you and help you get all the information that you need for your husband to get approved for Medicaid. And I did. And it was from that I realized I was on the wrong side of the desk. I wanted to help people. I didn't want to be the red tape. And so, again, single mom, scared to death to do it, but I left state employment and I became an independent contractor, worked for a company that did Medicaid planning a few years before I started my company. So it's been a passion that God led me to. I wasn't intentional in it. I just happened to be where God put me. And
you weren't intentional, but God was intentional, and you were obedient to that call.
Oh, and he's always faithful.
And I mean, always faithful. And I can already tell we'll be in tears before we end this conversation. But sometimes we don't have to be intentional. God is always intentional. And if we are just paying attention to what it is that he is speaking in our heart, it can lead us into these places. And that's what I'm hearing in your story.
I trusted him, because here I was, single mom of 2 teenage girls, and I left that steady paycheck.
Yeah.
And started my own company.
Yeah.
And I listened to some of my heroes tell their stories about how they, put out this intention in the world and made a plan and followed here's what I did. I said, okay, God, here I come.
Yeah.
And I never doubted him. I never worried, how am I going to get my next paycheck? How am I going to get my next client? I just knew that my job was to love people, to do the work that he had taught, put me in places to learn, and was continuing to, and to love people through it. And I have been blessed beyond belief at what God has put in my path to teach me. The people that I've gotten to know, the opportunities that I've been given, all have created my love of doing what I do.
I don't think there could be a better testimony. I did a conversation recently with Dr. Fayron Epps. She is with Emory University, and all of her research is really around dementia and evidence-based approaches to helping people with dementia and so many different things. And even though all of our conversations do not revolve around Alzheimer's or dementia or end of life. I mean, her conversation, and this is relevant, her conversation was really around purpose. And that's where she really wanted to focus. And what is such a common thread is, which I think will minister to so many people listening to your testimony, is if you're concerned about what exactly your purpose is, and you are another generation, a younger generation, trying to find your way either through the pandemic or whatever it is, to really hear from someone like you or myself or Dr. Fayron and so many other of us that are right in the prime of our life, I say, that God has a way of making all the threads connect. Even when we are not sure that we are going in the right direction, he uses every single thing. And it has this way of working out when our heart is led by him, and when we say yes to the path as it evolves. Just trust the process. And that's what I'm hearing from you.
And you are hearing correctly. The gentleman who I went to work for doing the Medicaid planning when I first left the state used to say to me, Maureen, your job is to go in there with blinders on and get the Medicaid done. Well, you cannot step into an elder's life and not see all of the things that they're dealing with, all of the needs
Well, you
that
can,
they have.
but
Well, you shouldn't.
right. Yes.
And I couldn't. And so again, I say to you that I might have been content staying there in that company had he not made that statement to me. And I said to myself, self, because that's who I call me when I'm talking to me. I said, self, you don't want to be that person. You want to be the person who walks in and holds somebody's hand. Don't lead them. They don't need to be led. They need to have someone walking beside them. And, you know, sometimes they're in the lead. They're always my boss. They're always the one that's telling me yes or no. I want this. I don't want this. Oh, this is what I want you to do. But, you know, often people say to me, how do you remember all this stuff? You know, how do you know this? And I say to them, I ask them, what did you do for a living? And it doesn't matter what their answer is. I say, if someone had taken me, dropped me into the middle of your job and said, do this job with nobody to tell you how, no manual to study, I would have run boohoo crying from the place,
Right.
screaming.
Right.
You gotten dropped into the middle of my job without anyone to train you, without any manuals. And I'm here to walk beside you. And when you need me, I'm here for the information. I'm here for the support. I'm here for whatever I can be here for you for.
Yeah, I am just like, I've just like fallen for, you know, your story that much more. And now even hearing your journey and how it's all taken place. I think about this idea of control, and I look at what you just said about being alongside someone. I think we've gotten confused sometimes, the idea of what it means to support and to walk with someone versus always feeling like we have to dominate situations. And this idea of, I had a conversation with Ellen Potts about end of life. We've got to continue that conversation. And even just listening to the work that you're doing, and we are really just losing our humanity about how we treat other people. And so hearing not only the work you're doing, but what led to the work you're doing was you listening to that voice and that part of your heart that was like, no, I can't do this. I'm going to have to do the opposite of what the company line would be at this point. And I think so many people can identify with that story and be encouraged to take a different step. You can say no to one thing and turn away from that to do something else if you're willing to trust God and trust yourself. Trust what you're hearing in your own heart and stay aligned to yourself. What do you think it would look like had you not taken that step?
Leaving the state employment?
Leaving the state employment and even not listening to yourself when you went home that night.
Oh, well, I would have been a miserably
pivotal moment.
Yes, it was. And I would have been a miserable, unhappy, unfulfilled person. And that's not to say that people who do that job aren't serving. They are. And I'm sure that many of them are exactly where God wanted them to be.
Right.
It wasn't for me.
Right.
That was the
so
difference.
Important. Yes.
Yes. And I think that the people who work for different state agencies have a miserably hard job. They're understaffed, underpaid, undertrained. And, my respect goes out to the vast majority of those people, because without them, where would we be?
Right.
So I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that I am better than. I am saying that just wasn't the right thing for me.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think that's the key too, that, we never know all the time where these conversations are going to go, but I think it's a really important point to make, because God has a customized individual call on each person's life. But what I really find so potent about what you're describing and how you landed here is how you were able to tease out what was right for you, what was resonating with you, what felt wrong for you. And I think sometimes especially even times like COVID, where it's really a time of reflection. I don't know if we're getting it or not. I don't think we are collectively, but for those people that are getting it, it's a time of reflection so that we can come in alignment with our life moving forward. I think that's what death does. I think that's what loss in any way does. I think when we get to these intersections where we lower ourselves to do the will of God in whatever way he's leading us, that I know for myself, I never wanted to be a minister. I never wanted to go to seminary. I never wanted to be a speaker. I never wanted any of that. But when we say yes to the Lord, it kind of opens this path in so many different ways. And it also touches us in the right place for us to feel the confidence and the courage to move forward. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Tell us a little bit about your background, born and raised. I mean, you live in Florida.
Well, I was born in Chicago.
Chicago.
As soon as I say Chicago, people know where I'm from.
Yeah.
But my family moved to Florida in 1971, so I'm pretty darn close to a Floridian as you can get. So,
yeah. Yes.
But I often say I haven't necessarily grown up in Florida. I've just gotten taller because I haven't grown up yet. So.
Yeah. Well, and you say you have children.
I do. I have two wonderful daughters. One is a detective with the City of St. Petersburg Police Department, and the other is a 911 operator with that same City of St. Pete. And then I have a beautiful granddaughter who's 3 years old. And if I could have just skipped the children part and gone straight to grandchildren, I would have done that. I believe.
That's so sweet. That's so nice. I would like to engage in the conversation around being a patient advocate. And prior to being a patient, so was there in between from the story, the testimony you shared and becoming a patient advocate? And but this is the pearl. Was in this in between, how did it go from whatever it was to being a patient advocate specifically? Because as you and I have talked briefly about, it is a difference.
Very much so.
So talk a little bit about that.
I alluded a little while ago to the fact that, my main business was doing Medicaid eligibility via aid and attendance. Yes. And that's what I got paid to do. What I did in addition to that was unpaid was a lot of, as I said, helping people find solutions for everything else that was going on in their life. And then
name a few of those things.
Well, let's say, for example, that I was brought in because it was time for someone in the family to go into an assisted living facility.
Yes.
And I was going to help them with the VA and the Medicaid and protect their assets so that they would have all of that to live their life out in dignity. You can't just, go through, as my clients still do, the yellow pages and, look up assisted living facility and then close your eyes, put your finger on one and say, oh, that's where I'm going to go live. And without knowing the systems involved in picking the right one. And, you walk into an assisted living facility and there's beautiful eye candy, there's chandeliers, there's artwork, there's beautiful furniture, they're piping in music and the parts they take you through looks like you're in Shangri-La. And you think, this is where I want my mom. Okay. But if they're spending all that time and money on making you think this is what you want by how it looks, the real question is how much money do they spend on staff? How much money do they spend training their staff, making sure their staff are being fulfilled? Because when the staff's unhappy, when their needs aren't being met, when they're feeling like they're nothing more than a pawn on a chessboard, the people living there that depend on them are not getting the care.
Correct.
And one of the things I always tell people is whether it's a nursing home, assisted living, adult day center, observe the people who work there. Are they talking over the residents' heads about their weekend, about, the pizza party, whatever, or are they engaging
with the people?
With the people, they can still talk about their life. Everybody loves to hear this stuff, but are they talking over their heads or are they including them in the conversation?
Yeah.
When they're providing support and care, are they looking at the person or are they just in so much of a hurry to get done what they've got to get done that they aren't looking at the person, they aren't giving them nice, warm touches? I'm not just talking about bathing them or changing them or dressing them. I'm talking about caressing, putting lotion on.
Connection. You're talking about connection.
Are you talking to the person and looking them in the eyes, or are they yelling out over their shoulder to somebody out in the hall? And that can happen regardless, but I'm talking about the vast majority of the time.
Yeah.
And then, what's the difference between a Wednesday at this place and a Sunday at this place?
I find that so many people, when it gets to that place, for whatever reason, because I'm sure you're not just dealing with people looking into that for the reasons of dementia or memory care, but in general. And being in a place of crisis when they're doing it.
Yep.
Ellen and I talked about this in terms of us planning and preparing and hospice and just different things. But I find what you're saying so incredibly valuable, because what happens is you start looking for the wrong things. And what you're describing is looking underneath the surface for the things that will really answer the question or tell you better, how will your loved one be cared for?
When no one's looking.
When no one is looking.
When no one is looking. Because I have had the privilege of becoming like a piece of furniture, because I'm around so much for my clients that the staff forget I'm there. And I get to see what's really happening. But I have to tell you, Deborah, one of the things I will fight tooth and nail for is to keep people aging in place for as long as it is healthy and safe for both the care partners.
Absolutely.
Because, a lot of people get a guilt trip laid on them by their parent, by their spouse, whomever, saying, you said you'd never put me in an assisted living. You said you'd never put me in a nursing home. Fact of the matter is, sometimes that is exactly where somebody needs to be. But there's also a lot of stuff that can be done to support the care provider and the care receiver at home before you make that decision. So I fight diligently for that.
Tell me what those fights look like.
So you're going to get, I keep using this term, but you're going to get the company line if you look at what programs are available through, for example, the state of Florida or the state of Louisiana or whatever. Well, you can go to websites and they'll list all these programs, and you think, well, goodness, that's wonderful. If I could do that, I can keep mom at home, or whomever.
Right.
And then you try to start accessing the programs. And then it becomes like you're a rat in a maze because they keep sending you all these different ways. I always talk about it like a reverse Jenga game. Jenga is where they put all those blocks of wood together and you pull one out without the thing toppling. Well, it's a reverse game for me. I keep putting these pieces together because no one thing is going to be the whole answer.
Right.
And so, yes, I do access a lot of the government programs for people, community, the church, family, neighbors,
right.
Senior centers. If the person has a diagnosis, there is usually an organization, nonprofit usually, that supports people with that diagnosis, getting them in touch with that. It's putting it all together. And unfortunately, Deborah, if people wait until they're in crisis, I don't have the time to build. And that's why during COVID, I said, what can I do that can take all this stuff that I do and put it into a bowl, so to speak, that is presentable and understandable so that people understand what I do for them. And
right.
the board certified patient advocate was it.
Right.
There are board certified patient advocates that do a lot of things I don't do. And so I have familiarized myself with a lot of those people so that I can refer to them if I'm not the right fit.
Right.
So yeah, that you talked about COVID and what we could learn through COVID. Well, yeah, number one, I learned we need to all sit down and look at what's really important. And number two, it gave me an opportunity to take a year and go back to school, so to speak, to become a board certified patient advocate. And now I feel like I serve people so much better, more thoroughly.
Yet more effectively for you.
Yes.